Good evening, everybody, and welcome along to the third night of racing in the Junior Saloon Car Championship's official esports series, coming to you tonight live from the Brands Hatch Indy circuit. One of really two spiritual homes of British motorsport, you'd have to say, and one that certainly is going to give us a good night of entertainment, I'm sure. Andy McEwen here in the commentary box to talk you through all of the action, and as ever, a big shout out to everyone who works so hard behind the scenes on this championship to make things happen, from Mick Sutton, who is our series organiser, the man behind PASR organising the championship, Scott Thorne, who is our race director and safety car driver. We've seen quite a bit of Scott out on track in the BMW safety car so far this season, and also to Tom O'Farrell, our broadcast director, all of whom are just as excited as I am for what is to come here tonight. This third week of racing, as I said, we kick things off at the home of British motorsport, the definitive home of British motorsport, Silverstone, a couple of weeks ago. One race there before we went to two races at Donington Park on the national circuit a week ago, and that will be the format for the bulk of the rest of the season, including tonight at Brands Hatch. Next week we head to Croft, which will mark the halfway point of the season. Alton Park's Island circuit on the 23rd of March, followed by the full 300 layout at Snetterton, and it all finishes at the high-speed Hampshire Super Bowl, the Thruxton circuit. A brilliant place for a championship decider, especially in these Junior Saloon Car Championship Citroen Saxos that do provide great slipstreaming racing. We've seen that across both of the first 2 weeks of the championship so far, and I'm sure we will see that very much at Thruxton at the end of the season. Might be a little bit different though tonight here at Brands Hatch, a tight technical bullring of a circuit, but still one that the drivers are familiar with, and I'm sure one that they'll be able to put on some really good racing at. That is the way the calendar looks then. What are they all fighting for? Well, apart from the honour of being the first ever Junior Saloon Car Championship esports champion, there are also some trophies available for our top three drivers come the end of the season, as well as cash prizes, £300 for our champion, £200 for second place, and £100 for the driver third in the points. The champion also has the option of trading in that £300 for an Optics 31.5-inch curved gaming monitor if they want to upgrade their sim racing setup, as I'm sure many of the drivers will be keen to do so. And they can also do that in some small way at least by winning the Driver of the Round award, for which the prize is a pair of FreeM gloves. FreeM on board as sponsors for this championship, for which we're very grateful, and they are donating a free set of sim racing gloves to the Driver of the Round, nominated by the broadcast team, but we will take sensible, unbiased suggestions from the YouTube chat as well. So if there's anyone who catches your eye over the course of the night, then do be sure to let us know. A week ago at Donington Park, lots of drivers caught our eye, actually. There was some really good racing on the national circuit, and CJ Morgan, despite arguably not being the fastest driver on the night, he was one of the fastest drivers. He wouldn't have finished first in race 1 and second in race 2 otherwise, but he certainly had more of a fight on his hands than he had at the season opener at Silverstone. But he came out nonetheless with a 14-point advantage. He was the only driver to get a podium in both of the two 20-minute races. Riley Bishop managed a podium in race 2. Jamie Petters was a winner in the second race of the night, and so they are the most immediate challengers to CJ Morgan's early season championship lead. And then you go back by a further 9 points to Zach Palmer in 4th, and then look how tight this is. You've got the next 7 drivers covered by 7 points. Zach Palmer 4th, Alexander Mostav and Jensen Bell tied for 5th, are just 2 points behind him. Then 1 point back to Harley Connolly, another point back to Lewis Stannard, and Jordan Taylor, who was a debutant in the series last week and was immediately on podium pace. Well, Jordan will be starting, will come into the night 9th in the championship, just ahead of Nathan Jensen, completing the top 10. That is how the bulk of the championship contenders shape up then. Further back, we've got the likes of Luke Sintler, Gabriel Doyle-Parfait. He's been Mr. Excitement so far in the championship, it must be said. And then a few of those who have had trouble, shall we say, or perhaps found themselves in trouble. Penalty points applied to Charlie Constable, James Sherrington, Josh Salvadori, Jonathan Moore, and Cameron Pratt-Thompson for various indiscretions earlier on in the season, but we're hoping to see a little bit less of that as the drivers naturally get a bit more experienced and acclimatised to the championship moving forwards. So, Brands Hatch Indy circuit then qualifying underway for the 4th and 5th rounds of the championship. A reminder, if this is your first time tuning in to the JSCC eSeries, we have two 20-minute races over the course of the night, a 15-minute qualifying session with which we are just past halfway through now, sets the grid for race 1, and then it's a full reversed grid for the second race. So we take the finishing order from race 1, we flip it upside down, and that gives us the grid for race number 2. So even if your first race of the night doesn't go all that well, you still have an opportunity to score some points later on in the evening. As we sort of expected around Brands Hatch, by far the shortest of the tracks that we're racing at this season. The qualifying times are already exceptionally tight. It's championship leader CJ Morgan is right now on a 58.851, but look at the margin that he's got over Alexander Mostam, virtually the same time, just a few thousands, in fact a few tens of thousands of a second between CJ and Mostam, with Luke Sittler third fastest as we stand, also within a 10th of pole position. Jordan Taylor there jumps into 4th position with 58.86, and is also within 1/10 of the pole position. But let's ride on board, shall we, with CJ Morgan as he takes us around a lap of the Brands Hatch Indy circuit. It's under a minute, as we can see, so it's pretty much relentless action right from the word go into Paddock Hill Bend, one of the most iconic corners in British motorsport. Hooks up the curve nicely, controls the understeer over the crest, down through the dip, and then back up towards up Halewoods Hill towards Druids. Really tricky right hand of this. Interesting that CJ takes a really late turn in. Lots of drivers may choose to take the early apex there, use the curb to rotate through the corner, then they drop down into Graham Hill Bend. Careful not to dip a wheel on the grass turning in, not to run too wide on the exit. That might have been an invalidated lap there for CJ. He was a long way beyond the outside edge of that curb. And through 30, should be flat out in these cars. If it's not, then it will be very close to flat out. And then a really tricky braking zone through McLaren and into Clearways. This long opening out right-hander, but it opens out over a crest. Again, front-wheel drive cars naturally start to pick a bit of understeer up there. Then foot flat to the boards through Clark Curve, hugging the white line for the shortest route to the line. And can CJ Morgan reclaim his pole position with that lap? The answer is no. I say reclaim because when we started the lap, was on pole. By the time he got halfway around it, though, Alexander Mostam had pipped himself. 58.763 for Mostam. First driver to get into the 58.7 so far, and he has gone to provisional pole position. Good to have Levine Kishore back as well. Levine had to miss the Donington Park rounds, but was a front runner in the race that we had at Silverstone, finishing second in that race. So Levine Kishore definitely, you'd expect to be a podium challenger here today, but at the moment seems to be struggling a bit, down in 10th position, just under 0.6 of a second away from the fastest time, and across the line he goes with, again, no improvement that time around. So Levine Kishore, who I believe is feeling a little bit under the weather coming into tonight's races, perhaps just hoping for damage limitation tonight, get a few points on the board, and really look to try and challenge properly for race victories again in a week's time at Croft. Riley Bishop was someone who was challenging for victories a week ago and moved into second place in the championship, having got into Donington Park third, and a fourth and a third place finish at Donington. Was a bit disappointed, though, I sense, because he did start on pole position for the first race, got a bonus point for that as well, but couldn't quite make the podium in race 1. In the reverse grid race, though, he drove really well, had a great battle with Jamie Petters and Riley and CJ Morgan for the podium places. Came home third position in that one. Now he is down in 7th as it stands within this qualifying session, though, so work to be done for Riley. Let's see whether or not he can manage it. I don't think this is likely to be an improvement. You can see the sector times there, all that good through the first half of the lap, and the second half of the lap proving to be much the same as well. So stays where he was. Zach Palmer, another driver you would expect to be a little bit closer to the front. Zach is 4th in the points, despite the fact he's not had a top 5 finish yet this season. Takes a very wide line through Clark Curve, and clearly setting himself up for his next lap, as opposed to seriously, well, actually that wasn't improved with a 59.7 though, a full second off pole. We can expect Zach to go a little bit better than that. It's kind of the problem though, isn't it, with racing around such a short circuit as this one. Have to be a fraction off the pace, and you suddenly found yourself 3 or 4 rows further back than where you want to be. So Zach Palmer in that position himself right now, a full second back is a fair chunk of time, no matter what racetrack you are competing at. You're definitely wanting to find a bit more time than that. Through 30s he will go. Jamie Petters about to come across the line. This is to start a flying lap. Jamie Petters 8th fastest right now, 3rd in the championship, and our most recent race winner. In fact, the first driver not called CJ Morgan to win a race this season. He did so in that reverse grid race at Donington Park. He had finished only 6th in race 1, but had been in the lead pack in that first race, only to get fired off the road in some of the very intense racing that we had halfway through that race. With contact down coming out of the old hairpin seat for a call, sent Jamie off into the Donington Park scenery. Might live to regret that, because he's struggling again to really unlock the outright pace here tonight. Works his way through clearways, Clark Curve out onto the pit straight once again. You've got Carl that far behind him as well. Riley Bishop, I think that is, trying to pick up a bit of a slipstream. Let's see whether Jamie can improve. Quarter of a second down in the first set. This might be an improvement though upon 8th still. Crosses the line at a 59.2, so no, not quite within the 0.4 of a second deficit that he currently had to pole position. Same was true of Riley Bishop behind. In fact, those two at the moment will be sharing the 4th row of the grid. They've got Naveen Kishore just ahead, who is 10th fastest. There is Riley. So a bit of a jumbled up grid that we've got here, and with a few of our expected frontrunners struggling, that's kind of opened the door for some other drivers to maybe have their best qualifying of the season so far. Looking at the people like, Luke Sintler, 3rd fastest right now, another driver who debuted at Donington, qualified 6th there though, so he's already improving on that quite a bit. Lewis Stannard is 5th fastest right now. Stannard's best qualifying was 10th back at Silverstone. Jamie Sherrington as well, who did pick up a penalty after last week's racing. The only driver, I believe, to pick up a penalty after Donington, and it wasn't even for an on-track incident, it was for being absent from the driver's briefing beforehand, unfortunately. He's up there in 6th place, which would be one of his best efforts of the season so far. In fact, it would be. He's, again, had a best qualifying effort of 10th so far. Checkered flag is out. Driver starting to cross the line to take the checkered flag, and Nathan Jensen only now putting in his one and only eligible qualifying lap. And so, unsurprisingly, Nathan Jensen will bring up the rear of the grid. Does look, though, doesn't it, like Alexander Mostav is going to start from pole. Luke Sintler, for some reason, dropping down the timing screen there. Not entirely sure what that's all about. He should be 3rd fastest. For some reason, drops to the bottom of the timing tower. So, hopefully timing and scoring will sort itself out in the near future. Lewis Stannard, I noticed, by the way, stopped halfway through that session. So, disappointing, but particularly impressive that he was able to go 5th fastest, even though he only competed in about half of the qualifying session. So, qualifying done with them. Alexander Mostav it is who will take the pole position for our first race of the night here at Brands Hatch. And he will take with that a bonus championship point as well. He was into now within 1 point of Zach Palmer in 4th position in the championship standings. But realistically, we're kind of looking at those top 3 sort of breaking away now, aren't we? CJ Morgan, Riley Bishop, Jamie Petters, all within 20 points of each other. And it's then down to the likes of Zach Palmer and Alexander Mostav to try and close that gap. Well, Alexander has closed the gap by a point after that qualifying session, and we can get his thoughts now on that because he joins us in the commentary box. Alex, well done on that qualifying effort, your first pole position of the season, and a pretty late improvement as well. Were you always confident that you had that lap time in the bag?
Well, I was hoping I'd have it in there, but you never really know. Pressure can kind of get to you at times, but I'm just glad that I managed to get a good lap in.
Very good lap as well, and given how close those times were, it's going to be important, I think, to start at the front, isn't it? Because the top sort of 5 or 6, all within a couple of tenths of each other, you want to try and be at the front to have the best chance of breaking away, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so, but I'm not really sure, considering how close the times are, that I will break away, so I'm hoping for a fun, interesting race.
Which you've had a few of so far. 2 fifth place finishes at Donington Park a week ago, looking for that first podium, I guess. But I was just saying that we're already starting to see those top 3 drivers in the points making a bit of a breakaway, and it's you, it's Zach, it's Jensen, Harley, all trying to chase after them. This really is where your championship campaign starts, isn't it? A couple of good results tonight could put you right back in the picture.
Yeah, I hope so. But then CJ is a very good driver, and so is everybody else on the grid, so I hope to do well, but I also don't want to get my hopes too high, and yeah, I look forward to a good race.
Brands Hatch, a track that always does produce good racing. It can get a bit physical out there though, can't it? So do you expect to have to get your elbows out a bit here to defend that lead?
Well, maybe, but obviously no bullying people off the track, just, yeah.
Yes,
just fair, fun driving.
That's probably sensible. Alexander, we'll let you go and finish your preparations off for the race, but
Thank you.
congratulations
Have a
on
good
pole
day.
position.
Thank you, thank you.
So qualifying going the way of the Chandler Motorsport driver then, who will start from the very front of the grid in our fourth round of the championship then, third week of racing. Had that season opener at Silverstone curtailed, just won the race unfortunately, but every race that we have had has been very, very exciting, and I'm fully anticipating that that will be the same story again here tonight. We are less than a minute away from getting our first race of the evening underway. Thank you everyone for joining us, and let's see how the drivers get on after a very, very closely fought qualifying session. I anticipate that this could be an equally closely fought race. Alexander Mostav and CJ Morgan then making up the front row of the grid. Luke Stintler starts next alongside the black car there of Jordan Taylor. Then Lewis Stannard and James Sherrington together on row number 3. Riley Bishop and Jamie Petters a lot further back than you'd expect. They weren't far off on times, but they will have to come through from the middle of the grid there. They're sharing row 4 ahead of Harley Connolly, another quick driver, and Levine Kishaw, another quick driver. So that's a really quick bunch who did not have a great qualifying session. Then you've got Crudson, Palmer and Jensen at the back of the field as we prepare for our first 20-minute bounce here around the Brands Hatch Indy circuit. Eyes will turn towards the lighting gantry in the very near future, and the two all-white cars on the front row of the grid will launch towards Paddock Hill Bend together. Not always the best thing to be starting on pole position here at Brands Hatch. You can see the slope of the start-finish line there. Let's see how Mostav deals with it though as the lights go out, and he gets an absolutely demon start. Look at Mostav go. That was a picture-perfect launch off the line, and he will lead them comfortably into the first corner. CJ Morgan under pressure though. That's Jordan Taylor coming round the outside, so it wasn't a great start for Luke Stintler, and he has dropped down into third. Can Jordan Taylor get the switch back up the inside of championship leader CJ Morgan? Not quite, as they make their way out of paddock and up towards Druids for the first time. But a jockey good position, around goes Jamie Petters, tangling there with, who was that? Well, certainly tangling with, well, a few of the cars further back, it must be said. Harley Connolly was involved in that, so was Riley Bishop. There is Bishop getting going again, but somehow out of all of that, I think Petters kind of got away with it in 8th position, but he had a really good start until that point, and suddenly found himself pointing the wrong way at Druids corner. Further back, good battling going on here. Nathan Jensen is up the inside of Crudson then, who is, as I said, our new driver for this weekend. In fact, up the inside of Jamie Petters, that is Crudson, the yellow car just ahead, as this trio battle over 8th, 9th and 10th positions. And out wide goes Nathan Jensen, and up the inside goes Jamie Petters, who's had a very up and down start to the race. That is Zach Palmer in the pit lane, though. Zach Palmer, who started at the back of the grid, gained some ground in the early going, but he's in the pit lane, perhaps with some damage as a result of the first few corners contact. That's a shame for Zach, who will be taken out of contention. Crudson out on the dirty side of the road, no grip there at Paddock Hill Bend, and so Petters and Jensen both go back through on the inside, getting used actually that Zach Palmer has a drive-through penalty. I'm guessing that is for a start line infringement. A jump start more than likely was the reason for that, and so he is already back into the race, but of course losing a lot of time early in the race. And of course he did stop in his pit box, didn't he? A drive-through penalty, you don't have to do that, so perhaps a bit of a miscommunication there, a misunderstanding maybe, of the penalty that he was given. So Jamie Petters then establishing himself in 7th place again, but he'd have liked to have been a bit further up than that after the brilliant first few corners he had. And if we're going to talk about good starts, we really have to talk about Alexander Mostav, who got off the line absolutely perfectly. CJ Morgan, though, running him down now that we're getting into the race. He's pulling away from Jordan Taylor, who has got Luke Stintler right behind her. Remember, Luke did out-qualify Jordan by 1 position on the grid. They swapped around into the first turn. Jordan Taylor really racy through the first couple of corners. Now just starting to watch his mirrors a bit more maybe than he's focusing on what's going on in front of him. And so just dropping ever so slightly back from the two in front of him. Dropping down into Graham Hill Bend, then on board with Stintler in 3rd position. Hops over the curbs there through Graham Hill Bend, drifts out wide over the grass. Bounces his way back onto the road. Luke Stintler, you can see the time that cost him actually. Slightly scrappy run through Graham Hill Bend, and so Jordan Taylor pulling a couple of car lengths on him for now. Clearways, careful not to understeer off the road completely there. These cars, which at every other race, every other track that we've raced at so far, have looked really oversteery, almost looking a bit understeery here at Brands Hatch, aren't they? It can sometimes be the case. It's a track that really punishes that left front tyre on a front-wheel drive car. And despite the fact you're braking over crests quite a lot, which can lead to a bit of oversteer. That doesn't seem to be the case in these cars, does it? Armfuls of understeer going into Druids we've seen from some of the onboards. Drivers are going to have to be careful to manage that left front tyre. I think we've heard them talk about tyre wear a little bit in both of the tracks we've raced at so far. That is Nathan Jensen, who's been off at Paddock Hill Bend. The Razzie Motorsport driver dropping down into 10th position, so Peters I think went through, certainly Cruden and Bishop did. Of course he was battling with a little bit earlier on. Harley Connolly down in 11th meanwhile has got Lewis Stannard right behind him. Now Stannard started pretty well up the grid, didn't he? He was one of the drivers who tangled with Jamie Peters at Druids on that one. In fact, I think Lewis was the car in the middle of a 3-wide situation. He goes on the inside there though of Harley Connolly and makes a really nice move through Surtees. Not an easy place to execute and overtake, but Lewis made that look pretty easy. Side action here though, as Riley Bishop is up the inside now, or Crudson. Crudson then will drop down, I suspect, into 9th place, although he's hanging tough on the outside line. He went wide here a couple of laps ago though, and decided better of trying to hang it around the outside there. Riley Bishop does go through into 8th position. Car out wide in the gravel, and that's Nathan Jensen again, who has had a big moment this time through Paddock Hill Bend. In fact, he's pointing the wrong way at the bottom of the hill. Harley Connolly, I think, had been out in the gravel trap as well. Not sure whether they'd made contact or Harley was just trying to avoid him. Quite how Jensen was back ahead of Harley, I'm not entirely sure because... oh, I suppose, yeah, he had just passed him, hadn't he, in Surtees. So, yeah, got through and immediately the place switches back once more. 5 minutes in then, lots of entertainment as always at the start of the race, and again the dynamic at the front of the race not changing massively. The two white cars of Mostav and Morgan continuing to lead the way, but Jordan Taylor now starting to distance himself slightly from Luke Sintler. Perhaps that's just making it look like he's getting a bit closer to the leader, and there was a mistake there from the leader. Mostav out wide through Paddock Hill Bend, and CJ Morgan needed no second invitation. He dives up the inside into Druids, and that was just a tiny little fumble from Mostav. He said that he wasn't expecting to be able to pull away in this race. That proved to be the case. Under pressure there, perhaps just a little bit wide of the mark coming down through Paddock Hill Bend. That, by dipping wheel into the gravel trap, meant that he lost some momentum, but did well actually not to lose control of the car. And still has a chance to regroup and retaliate against CJ Morgan here. He has to just back into the rhythm a little bit though. Jordan Taylor closing right in, and is Mostav heading for the pit lane? He is! Mostav into the pit lane. So what is this all about? Alexander Mostav clearly with a problem of some sort. But what it is, I could not tell you. Mostav though in, and his day, well, he's not done completely, but what is the Chandler Motorsport driver doing in the pits? Well, not pit stop racing, it was a very short stop. Was that another penalty for Mostav? Surely if it was, then he would have had to have served it by now. So that I am not entirely sure of, and Mostav will rejoin the track at the back end of the top 10, so very bizarre going on there for our erstwhile race leader. And again, stopping in his pit box suggests that there was something wrong with the car. Now, had he underfueled the car perhaps? Had he realised that he wasn't going to make it to the end and he'd lost the lead anyway, so perhaps had to come in and top up the fuel. It was a very short stop though, so I'm not entirely sure. We'll try and get to the bottom of that and let you know if we can, but what it does mean is that CJ Morgan is now relatively unchallenged at the front of the field. Jordan Taylor though is not a million miles back. He'll be getting a little bit of a slipstream from that distance. Of course, he isn't feeling any pressure from Sintler either, so might still be able to challenge CJ Morgan. Jordan Taylor was involved in some of the battles at the front of the field at Donington, and a podium finish in race 1, a 4th in race 2 was a really strong debut in the championship for Jordan. Now looks to try and at least back up that podium pace from Donington, maybe even grabbing a race victory here at Brands Hatch. Ollie Connolly then down through Paddock Hill Bend. He's got Alexander Mostav ahead of him. The suspicion generally seems to be that Mostav was indeed low on fuel and had to come in and add some fuel to the car. Of course, that is an easy thing to do between qualifying and the race, because the drivers will all want to go with a very light fuel load in qualifying. The lighter the car, the quicker it will go, especially around a technical circuit like this, and especially around a track where the times are as close as they are around here. If you can save a tenth of a second or so by having less fuel in your car, that will gain you a few positions on the grid, but really important that you then remember to add the fuel for the race. And easy to forget, I think, sometimes that many of these drivers have not done an awful lot of sim racing in the past. These are things that are not yet second nature to them. Racing, though, clearly is something that's second nature to Alexander Mostav, because he's making a really nice move here up the inside of Paddock Hill Bend. And he will get past Will Crudson there. Left the door nicely open for the driver who was fastest in qualifying. Not much point really in Will putting up too much of a fight there against Alexander. The question now becomes how far up the grid can Alexander get in this one. He's got Lewis Stannard right ahead of him, but then 6.5 seconds of empty racetrack before he catches Riley Bishop, who himself was nearly 2.5 behind JB Petters and Levine Kishaw. I haven't mentioned Kishaw yet in this race, but Levine running in a solid 5th place, having not qualified all that well. Kept himself out of trouble in the opening exchanges. He's running a very solid top 5 for the time being. Out of Clearways and Clark Curve. 17, new to the championship. Not a factor at the front of the field in this one, but of course thinking ahead to that reverse grid race, could be a contender. As long as you're on the lead lap, you will get included in the grid reversal. So at the moment, all 13 starters would be reversed. Finishes, I should say, would be reversed before the race to grid. It would be Zach Palmer and Nathan Jensen, who are having a pretty terrible race, it must be said, on the front row of the grid together. Stannard there out a bit wide through Druids. Almost left an opportunity for Mostav to get through on the inside line, but Alexander, strangely, isn't able to just drive straight past Lewis Stannard. I say strangely, I shouldn't be surprised actually, because Lewis did qualify inside the top 5 or so. So we know he's got good speed, but unfortunately was in the wrong place at the wrong time at the start of the race. Jordan Taylor, though, is in the right place at the right time, because we go into the second half of this race and he suddenly has bridged what was at one point a 1 second advantage for the race leader, and is now all over a sideways CJ Morgan, who didn't exactly move to defend out of Paddock Hill Bend, but Jordan Taylor had already decided he was going to the outside line after a lot of oversteer for CJ to lay the leader through Paddock Hill Bend. Again, there's a bit of a squeeze out of Druids, and this could bring Luke Sintler into play. Down into Graham Hill Bend they go. Jordan Taylor can sense this first victory of the season, and he is not counting himself out of championship contention yet either, it must be said. So Jordan Taylor wants to get this move done. I believe he's got the pace, certainly in this middle part of the race, to pull away. He's got to make the move first. All about patience. Just because you're quicker than another driver doesn't mean that you can drive through them. CJ Morgan at the moment is placing the car well on the track to not leave the door wide open for his pursuer. Come across the line again, absolutely nose to tail. So too still are Stannard and Mostav. And as Mostav goes into clearways, he thinks about the inside line. Ultimately wasn't quite close enough. Who gets the better exit? They're pretty even. And Mostav just not going to be quite close enough, I don't think, as they head towards Paddock. He will get that slipstream though. Slipstream's reasonably powerful in these cars. It's not super powerful because they are limited on top speed, being a junior car. Virtual Junior Saloon Car Championship Saxos, but they are very, very accurately modelled after the real world examples. So they are limited in speed. They don't accelerate all that well off the corners. It means that you've really got to keep momentum up through the turns, and that is what Stannard did there by taking that really high, wide, and handsome line through Druid's corner. You see the actual momentum that it gave him off the turn, almost an oval racing technique, that, isn't it? Going right round the outside of a corner. Looks like you're giving away a load of time through the apex, but then you gain it all back on corner exit, and Mostav has to regroup and think again. Back to the leading trio then, almost 2/3 of the way through this 4th round of the Junior Saloon Car Championship's official E-Series, and CJ Morgan weathering the storm for now, but Jordan Taylor is hunting around behind him, forces a defensive move out of the race leader, who will be feeling a little bit lucky, I suspect, to be in the lead anyway. We'll see CJ after that mistake for Mostav and then the unforced pit stop. A race victory far from guaranteed, and the best bit of news actually that I can give CJ Morgan right now is that Luke Sintler is catching them both, and as Luke Sintler starts to apply the pressure to Jordan Taylor, that could just distract Jordan and take his attentions away from the race leader, as he has to concentrate on defending 2nd place. Not guaranteed to happen, but that's what CJ Morgan will be hoping. Mostav and Stannard making contact at Graham Hill Bend there. Mostav was on the outside at Graham Hill, which is an interesting place to be. And look at the extra speed that Will Crudson carries down the straight. Jinks to the inside of Stannard. That is that lack of acceleration I was just talking about. If you get it wrong or if you have a moment somewhere, especially through a tight corner like Graham Hill Bend, you will lose all of your momentum down the next straight. But Stannard fights straight back again, gets to the inside through clearways, and I think he's going to leave a Will Crudson aside once more. Lewis Stannard, after some sort of a moment there involving Alexander Mostav at Graham Hill Bend, he's losing 2 places in 1 for the time being, but he slots back in front of Crudson. Ollie Connolly, of course, is the other yellow and black car just there in the background, trying his best to gain on this group, but Harley, for whatever reason, struggling a bit here at Brands Hatch. Top 10 in all 3 races so far this season as Harley, but that streak looks set to be broken here today. So across the line with 6 minutes to go come the leading 3, and exactly as I predicted, second to third is now closer than first to second, as Jordan Taylor starts to worry a bit more about what Luke Sintler is doing behind him than what CJ Morgan is doing ahead of him, and he makes a big mistake, runs out wide through Paddock Hill Bend. That is Sintler's opportunity. He's up the inside towards Druids Corner, and Luke Sintler will go through into second place, and that was just the pressure, I think, telling there, and perhaps a bit of frustration on Jordan Taylor's part. He will have felt through the middle portion of the race like he was quite a bit quicker than CJ Morgan, just couldn't quite find a way through, and by spending a couple of laps following CJ, it allowed Sintler to close in, and Jordan Taylor perhaps just overdriving a bit. That small list of mistakes through Paddock Hill Bend costing him second place, and likely costing either of them a shot at the race win, because they're now really holding each other up. Almost a jink up the inside into Clearway's corner there, but Sintler hangs on to it. Newly acquired second place, but just understeering a bit wide through Clearways. Can he get up the inside through Clark Curve? No, because Sintler does indeed slam the door in Jordan Taylor's face, and I suspect that Jordan is not quite close enough to have a go into Paddock Hill Bend. On board with the third place man, appearing in this race, looked as though he was going to be a real challenger for a race victory, but somehow CJ Morgan just seems to have this knack for weathering the storm, for avoiding the drama, and coming out with really good results. He's had 2 race wins and a second place finish already this season. This could be a third victory now, despite, again, not always looking like the fastest driver on the track. He's been consistent, he doesn't make mistakes, CJ Morgan, and that could be the difference between winning a championship or not winning a championship in a few weeks' time. Jordan Taylor, see if we can see any hints of tyre wear perhaps starting to creep in. It's corners like this one where the car just wants to understeer out wide. Didn't look too bad, actually, considering the attacking nature with which he approached that corner. You'd expect him to understeer. Actually, in the slipstream, he's not that far back from Sintler. Sintler actually just starting to gap him ever so slightly down the straight there towards Paddock. As I mentioned earlier on, drivers have been saying that the tyres do go off a bit towards the end of these races. They mentioned it at Silverstone, they really mentioned it at Donington last time. And here at Brands Hatch, I would have expected it to be at least as bad as that, if not worse, because you're scrabbling for grip out of some of these tight corners. That can really scrub the front tyres. Maybe that's what they're struggling with. Look at the rear of Sintler's car getting all out of shape through Graham Hill Bend, bounces over the curb, and perhaps gives Jordan Taylor a little bit of a hope that he might be able to launch an attack, not through this corner, but through the right-hander coming up at Clearways. Feints to the outside, almost as if he was well ready to jink up the inside, but can't quite get there. Carries the speed through the corner. This impressed me on the last lap. He carries that corner speed into Clearways, but doesn't really lose it on the way out either. Pretty strong run out of the final turn there for Taylor, as we return to a really good battle going on for fourth place back, really, because James Sherrington's been caught by Jamie Petters and Levine Kishaw and Riley Bishop, so 4 of them together fighting for positions outside of the podium places, but with probably 3 more laps to go. All eyes turn once more to the second place battle. Jordan Taylor doing his absolute best to get back into that second place. Meanwhile, Riley Bishop up the inside of Levine Kishaw. This for 6th position. Bit of a recovery drive here for Riley after a disappointing qualifying effort, but he's not got the move made yet. Stuck on the outside into Graham Hill Bend. They almost lean on each other slightly. Levine just manages to fend him off for now. Up towards Surtees then. 2 laps to go at the end of this one, and something has happened to Luke Sintler. Luke Sintler is slow, and I reckon he's out of fuel as well. Luke Sintler into the pit lane, and I think a few drivers have just been miscalculating their fuel mileage here at Brands Hatch. And Luke Sintler, slow off the final turn, heads for the pits, and that allows Jordan Taylor to go back through into second position, and it's really going to cost Luke Sintler, who looked as though maybe a second podium of the season could have been going his way. While James and Jamie here, James Sherrington and Jamie Petters doing battle over what is now third position. So this is now for a podium place. Sherrington hasn't had a podium so far this season. And Petters has had the one, of course, which was the win last time out at Donington Park. They're side by side out of Druids, though. And Petters, I think, is going to go through. He's bought himself a ticket to the inside line at Graham Hill Bend. And he is through into third position. So a timely move. A bit fortunate maybe to be on the podium, but you need a bit of luck in this business. Jamie Petters has had that and had some good pace as well in this race. Riley Bishop, meanwhile, still trying to get the better of Levine Kishore, who is back up the inside, and they make contact through clearways. Both drivers completely out of shape, and I think Levine is going to go through, but will he feel the need to give that place back, I wonder? It looks as though he is. That's heads-up driving there from Levine Kishore. Didn't realise that he may well have been to blame for that contact and did not want to get a penalty, so he allows Riley Bishop back through, and Bishop goes back into the top 5, but will now not have time to close back in on the cars ahead, Jamie Petters and James Sherrington, because that cost them 6 seconds. Wow, that is how much momentum you lose from having a sideways moment. Yes, it was a big moment, but I'm surprised they lost quite that much time to these two. Petters and Sherrington are still debating this third position. They will likely get one more lap at the end of this as well, because although they're only halfway around the lap with 20 seconds to go, they are 11.5 seconds adrift of the race leaders, who you can see in the distance are already going out of the final corner. So I think they're going to see the start of the final lap this time. These two have just over a lap of the Brands Hatch Indy circuit to settle it. So CJ Morgan then in the lead. Jordan Taylor, of course, back into second place now. Not really gaining hugely on Taylor. Just misses the apex slightly through Paddock Hill Bend, though. Sorry, not getting on Morgan, I should say. Morgan missing the apex. Taylor nailed it, gained a few car lengths there. Something that is becoming very clear in this championship. If the driver ahead of you makes even a small mistake and you can hook up a couple of good corners, you can gain half a second on them in just a couple of turns because of the importance of keeping the momentum up in these cars. CJ should be okay though, barring any major dramas here through the final corner. They've lapped, by the way, Zach Palmer by the looks of it, and Luke Sintler is a lap down. Now that could be significant because I'm not sure whether you have to finish on the lead lap to be classed in the reverse grid race. So the reverse grid format, I should say, so that may well hamper them for race number 2, but CJ Morgan refuses to be hampered. This has been another brilliant drive from the championship leader, who takes his 3rd victory from the first 4 races of the season. Jordan Taylor a fighting second place. Again, might be a bit disappointed not to have won, and Levine Kishore is off and going slowly, I presume, out of fuel as well. Jamie Petters gets the best of James Sherrington for the final podium step, with Riley Bishop likely to come through in 5th position now that Levine Kishore is out of the race. Confirmation, by the way, from Tom O'Farrell that it is anyone who finishes the race who gets involved in the reverse grid. Now, I'm presuming that means that Levine Kishore retiring on the final lap will not be included in that. Riley Bishop then 5th, Lewis Stannard 6th, Harley Connolly 7th, then it was Will Crewdson in 8th, and this the fight for 9th as Alexander Mostav, who led in the early stages from pole position, is going to come home a lowly 9th after, we think, a fuel miscalculation of his own. Something drivers will have to learn as we go deeper into the season, and a few drivers making that mistake already. As we've seen, it can be extremely costly. So, lots to talk about after our first race of the evening then. CJ Morgan, Jordan Taylor and Jamie Petters will join us on the podium in a moment or two. For CJ Morgan, like I said, he's had this brilliant run of victories, 3 wins from 4 races, but actually, more impressively, 4 podiums from 4 races, and that's championship winning consistency right there, you would have to say. We will hopefully have a chat with him in a moment. In fact, CJ has just joined us in the commentary box now, so we can talk to our race winner for the 3rd time this season. It is CJ Morgan, a winner, but CJ, a bit like Donington Park, really. There was a little bit of luck involved in that. Obviously, Alexander had that moment at Paddock Hill Bend, and even after that, Jordan was giving you a run for your money as well.
Yeah, 100% was. I think Alex was definitely the quicker driver. I'm not too sure what happened, whether it was either fuel or he got a track limits penalty. 'Cause I did see him go off the track once or twice. But when Jordan was right up my backside, I just had to put the car in the right place, wait for Luke to catch up and pressure him, and then I just went off. And that definitely worked in my favour.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw that little battle that you had with Jordan, and it looked a bit like you were fighting the car. A big bit of oversteer through Paddock Hill Bend, but then at other times it seemed the car wouldn't turn. Were you struggling as the tyres wore out there to find the right balance?
I think middle of the race, it was a bit hit or miss, the tyres, but at the start and towards the end, they definitely mellowed out.
Yeah, and that's why your pace was, again, impressive towards the end, gapping Jordan in the way that you did. Reverse grid race coming up. You've proven yourself pretty handy in these reverse grid races so far, but this a track that I am a little bit nervous about when it comes to the reverses because it is so tight. What's the game plan here in the early stages?
Well, just pick them off one by one, try and have a clean race. I've got my real life mechanic, Stephen Chandler, hyping me up on messages, so that's good. But we'll just see how it goes.
Good stuff. Well, CJ, congratulations on that third race victory, and best of luck for race 2.
Thank you, Andy.
CJ Morgan then gets the race win. As we said, though, given a real run for his money there by Jordan Taylor, who also joins us now in the box. And Jordan, your second visit onto the podium so far this season. It could so easily have been a race win, though, couldn't it?
Yeah, a bit gutting, to be honest. A mistake on my behalf. I think I was getting a bit too excited and wasn't thinking properly, but we got the reverse race now. Just gonna take it slow because we got the 20 minutes and because it's such a tight track with the runoffs being so, especially Paddock Hill, the gravel being right there, one mistake there, and I lose 2 to 3 seconds on one lap. So just take it steady, pick them off one by one.
Yeah, and important, I think, that you maintain a bit of patience because your race pace looks to be perhaps the strongest of anyone out there. It really looked like whenever you were in clean air there, you had the pace to close back in on CJ. You've got to be happy with that, especially around a track where the lap times are so tight.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to work on that. Hopefully it's paid off. We'll see in this next race.
Absolutely. Jordan, congratulations on the podium then, and again, best of luck for race 2.
Cheers, Andy.
And finally, Jamie Petters back on the podium again. But Jamie, it looked for a little while there early on that you weren't going to make it much beyond turn 2. It was a pretty eventful start to the race, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't quite there. I got off to a good initial clutch start, and then when I got up to think it was Druids, I ended up in a little incident, but managed to pull back through and get a podium, so...
Which is what it's all about, really. You know, that consistency and pulling a good result out even when things aren't necessarily going your way. You were our reverse grid winner at Donington Park. What are the chances that you can do that again here tonight, do you think?
Well, I'm not too sure on the times front. I'm not quite as quick as some of the front boys, but we'll have a go.
Absolutely, it's all about the fight, isn't it? Really, and often in these reverse grid races, outright pace isn't the be all and end all. So we'll wish you the best of luck, Jamie, and good to see you back on the podium.
Thank you.
So they were your top 3 finishers then from an eventful first race of the night, and usually the second race adds even further to that eventfulness. We have got a full reversed grid, minus Zach Palmer and Luke Sintler and Levine Kishore, as I suspected, because they were all classified 1 lap down. So, excuse me, the race 1 winner, CJ Morgan, will start from 10th on the grid, and Nathan Jensen on the pole position. Remember that we have our driver of the round award to be awarded at the end of the evening, and we will take your input as well. So if you are watching along on YouTube, you think that there's a certain driver who's impressed you so far, then do let us know, and we may well take that into account when making our ultimate driver of the day decision. And of course, we will take both races very much into account, so drivers still have an opportunity to impress us. I suspect here that we are going to be talking a lot about Alexander Mostav in this race, because he started from pole in race 1, was leading in the early stages, had that extra pit stop midway through the race that we weren't anticipating, but that puts him now on the front row of the grid alongside Nathan Jensen and just ahead of newbie Will Crudson and Harley Connolly. So keep an eye to that white car on the outside of row 1. Got a really good start in race 1 too, and we'll be hoping for the same now out of race number 2, which gets underway. And Mostav actually didn't react all that well. Jamie Petters hasn't gone anywhere though, gets rear-ended slightly by CJ Morgan, and Jamie Petters is going nowhere. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but the driver who finished third in race 1 is still not yet got fully up to speed. I think now he's starting to move, but that is an absolute disaster. Alexander Mostav though has got the early advantage as we predicted. Jordan Taylor there going 3 wide with Riley Bishop and Harley Connolly up the hill towards Druids Corner, and Will Cruden in the middle as well. There's contact, that Palmer is sideways. That was off the bumper of CJ Morgan, interestingly, who goes on the inside of Levine Kishore, and now there's more contact. Around goes Harley Connolly into the barriers. He rattled off both Kishore and CJ Morgan, and it is all kicked off in the early stages here at Brands Hatch, with the championship leader involved in a couple of early race skirmishes. But towards clearways we go for the first time. Lewis Stannard now at the inside of Nathan Jensen. That was robust, but he makes it work. That, meanwhile, is not the ideal line through clearways. Luke Sinclair is off as well, but that was Riley Bishop going all over the grass too. I'm not sure if those two things were related. CJ Morgan, meanwhile, weaving around because the safety car is out. So the safety car, which we avoided in race 1, is being scrambled here in the second race of the evening. So Scott Thorne takes the big beamer out onto the circuit. Lights are flashing, and he will bring everything back under control. That was slightly out of control, opening lap of the race, it must be said. But Alexander Mostav absolutely nailed it. He did exactly what he had to do there. He managed to get off the line well. As I said, his initial reaction didn't look all that good. By the time we saw him halfway around the lap, he was in the front of the field. Sinclair, unfortunately, though, anything but. He's in the pit lane. Looks like he's got some pretty significant damage to be repaired. Hoping that he can do that quickly enough that he doesn't go a lap down here. But for Luke, the driver who definitely had podium potential tonight, unfortunately doesn't look as though things are quite going to go his way. So Mostav then leads, Stannard second, Nathan Jensen third, Sherrington fourth, with Cruden fifth. Then it is Jordan Taylor. So Jordan Taylor getting some good ground. So too did CJ Morgan, but CJ definitely getting involved in some of the bits of contact there in the early stages. Then CJ Morgan 7th, Riley Bishop 8th. The rest of them in behind. Sinclair, by the way, I think is back out of the pit lane, so he has stayed on the lead lap. There is Luke Sinclair. That's good news. He may be at the back of the field, but he is still on the lead lap of the race. He will close in on the back of the field now as they're all trundling around behind the safety car. So not necessarily out of contention just yet. And you can see how hard he's pushing to try and get back into the safety car queue, which is just up at Druids Corner now. There you can see them turning through the right-hand hairpin. So for Sinclair, his race really hinges actually on how quickly he can go around this particular lap. He needs to catch the crocodile before they get lights out on the safety car, which will likely happen towards the end of this lap. So Alexander Mostav, in fact, there are the lights going out, so Scott Thorne accelerates away. Alexander Mostav is now in control of the pace, and it's up to him when he accelerates away. There is Sinclair. I don't think he's quite going to get there, is he? Unfortunately, he needed another lap behind the safety car, ideally, because the leaders already at clearways very shortly going to get up to full racing speed. In fact, Mostav has gone already, and that's a really good restart. Look at that, just gapping the second place driver, Lewis Stannard, a car length at a time. And so Alexander Mostav looking to try and make amends for a disappointing opening race of the night. Across the timing line now as the race leader. So race back underway then here at Brands Hatch. Already some action further back, and 3 wide action at that. Jordan Taylor up the inside of Will Cruden, but up the inside of both of them goes CJ Morgan. Slithers out wide, and Cruden, brilliant driving back up the inside of the pair of them. And it looks as though Harley Connolly will come with him as well. So Morgan and Taylor really delaying each other. Jordan Taylor back up the inside again now through Druids Corner, and he's going to lean on the championship leader on the exit. CJ Morgan standing his ground though. I don't think he really appreciated that, but Jordan Taylor goes through. CJ Morgan dropping back down into 8th position. Great heads-up driving there, though, from Will Cruden. He may be new to the championship, but there's nothing wrong with his racecraft. Read that situation really well. He is, though, now losing out to Riley Bishop, who goes up the inside for 5th position. That now becomes the outside for clearways, and as Cruden goes up the inside of him and gets sideways, CJ Morgan is up the inside of Jordan Taylor as well, and repays the favour, shows Jordan the edge of the road, and gets a big run on the 2 cars ahead. Now, which way does he go? On board with the championship leader. To the right is Cruden, to the left was Riley Bishop, but he has cleared the yellow car now, and so CJ CJ Morgan chooses to go with him to the outside line into Paddock Hill Bend. This is brave stuff. We're relying here on the car inside, not sliding out into you, but Will Cruden left him plenty of space, and CJ Morgan is through into 6th place, and then there's some contact up the road. Nathan Jensen getting sideways. That was James Sherrington into the back of him, I think. And now all of a sudden this battle pack is a battle pack fighting over 3rd position, because Mostav and Stannard have gone. Sherrington in 3rd though, in all sorts of trouble. Up the inside now will go Riley Bishop with a much better run through Graham Hill Bend. Side by side through Surtees is not easy to do though. Look at this, 7 of them under a blanket. 8 of them, in fact, as they go towards Surtees. This has got disaster written all over it, hasn't it? Into the right-hander they go. Bishop on the outside. Can he find the grip? Can he find the traction? Can he find the space? Yes, yes, and yes. He goes through. Oh, but that is Nathan Jensen sideways. Off into the gravel trap he goes. It's been a lap to forget for Nathan, who at the start of this lap was in a podium place, and he will end it pretty much outside of the top 10. So Riley Bishop goes 3rd. CJ Morgan 4th. Sherrington 5th. 6th Cruden. 7th Taylor. 8th Levine Kishore, who was looking up the inside into Paddock Hill Bend, but thought better of it. And on board now. Oh dear, with the triple 3 of Zach Palmer. And it all kicks off. Cruden is sideways. Palmer somehow by the skin of his teeth gets through, but Will Cruden unfortunately is the one who ends up pointing the wrong way. Jordan Taylor delayed in that as well, and that all just got a little bit too busy going through Paddock Hill Bend. They were trying their best to have an accident, in fairness, for the entire preceding lap, and they managed to keep it relatively clean until that point, but eventually something had to give, and sadly the weak link was Will Cruden in that instance. He was the one that got fired off into the gravel trap, so that splits the pack for the time being. And Jordan Taylor again has it all to do, right on the tail now of Harley Connolly, so he's down into 9th position is Jordan after that one. Still 13.25 minutes to go though, so important doesn't let his head drop too much here. He's got the pace to make forward progress, I think. Just needs to be patient, as he said to us after race 1. Patience key in these reverse grid races. Or chopping and changing here. Riley Bishop and CJ Morgan now over 3rd position. CJ goes through. Riley Bishop out into the gravel trap through Paddock. So CJ Morgan then up into a podium spot. Zach Palmer, who we were riding on board with through all that melee at Paddock a lap ago, losing out to Levine Kishore, who again is just sort of quietly going about his business here in this race. Now we're on board with Nathan Jensen. A grandstand view of some panel bashing going on there between Jordan Taylor and Harley Connolly. Taylor goes through, Connolly out over the curbs, and Nathan Jensen now sees a chance to get up the inside at Surtees. He'll ride the curb through the inside, he'll ride the door of Harley Connolly's car. Harley's still there somewhere though, and really coming back at him into Clearway's corner. You sense that Harley is a little bit miffed at the way that the last half a lap or so has played out, and he's not wanting to give this 9th place away without a fight. Clearways through Clark Curve, another hip check. No, they just about avoid it this time. Jensen sits on the left rear corner of Harley Connolly. Of course, the next 2 corners, though, right-handers, that favours Harley. Chops across the nose of the 34 car anyway, and then understeers out wide, and eventually makes it quite easy for Nathan Jensen to take that position. Jordan Taylor also nipping up the inside of Zach Palmer, looks, and Jordan Taylor back into 7th place now. It's a bit of a headbutt for his troubles through the apex. Drifts out a little bit wide. Zach, I think, will have to settle back in behind him. Yes, he does. So they drop their way down through Graham Hill Bend. The leader, remember, is still Alexander Mostav. Really challenge. You can just see him off in the distance. Lewis Stannard sitting in 2nd place for the time being. Stannard, of course, is looking for his first podium finish of the season. On course for that right now in 2nd, but with CJ Morgan, Riley Bishop closing in, that could now become the big fight, couldn't it, for the lower podium places. Mostav is going to be tough to beat on his on the pace that he showed earlier on in the night. CJ and Riley just have an answer here for Lewis Stannard. We'll have to see. We're ticking towards half race distance now. It's a big gap though, isn't it, actually? So I say they might have an answer for Lewis Stannard. They're going to really have to go some to catch him. And of course, in doing so, they will likely take some more life out of their front left tyre. So they've got to manage the situation here. It's tempting to just go hell for leather and try and catch the cars ahead at all costs, but to try and manage that tyre situation. Alexander Mostav not particularly managing the tyres, though. He just set a new fastest lap on the previous lap, lap number 8, as we tick towards halfway. On Connolly now inside of Nathan Jensen. This for 8th position. Connolly goes through. Zach Palmer, is he going to buy into this? Yes, he does. Goes for a gap that wasn't really there. Punts Nathan Jensen into the side of Harley Connolly. And somehow they're all still there the other side of the corner. They've completely swapped positions. And poor Harley Connolly, who was very much the innocent victim there, got shoveled back down into 10th place. But Zach Palmer, with a very aggressive move, it must be said, up the inside. I think both Nathan Jensen and Harley Connolly maybe having words with him after the race. But they all saved it. That's the main thing. They're all still going. Continue to settle the score over the remaining 10 minutes. Taylor on the inside of Aveen Kishore. 6th place now belongs to Jordan. A case of what could have been though tonight, really. Jordan said after race 1 he was disappointed not to win it. I think he'll be disappointed in this one not to make the podium, because it would take some real carnage ahead of him, I think, for that to be achievable this time. Towards Surtees they go. Kishore, who's been strangely off the pace tonight, it must be said, compared to the pace that we saw from Kishore at Silverstone when we last saw him. He finished second in the race at Silverstone, was a podium contender in race 2 before the red flag. He'll be disappointed, I suspect, not to be up there fighting for podiums again here tonight. Zach Palmer, Nathan Jensen and Harley Connolly here, just separating each other ever so slightly. Their dramas a lap ago, although that looked like Zach Palmer getting sideways. It was Zach Palmer getting sideways and throwing himself into the gravel trap. So Nathan Jensen goes back through with a wry smile on his face, probably. So too does Harley Connolly, and Zach Palmer's parking up. So Zach deciding that this race is not going particularly to plan. He's going to pull over and watch the race with the marshals from Druid's Corner. Not the worst place to park up and watch the racing, it must be said. There's already been plenty of action at Druids, and I suspect there will be plenty more before the race is done. Shame though for Harley there. Sorry, for Zach there. He's going to give away any chance of points in this race, but he's certainly been an exciting driver to watch, and of course came into the night 4th in the championship, so really didn't need a bad night, but it's, looks like it's what he's going to have. CJ Morgan though, continuing to have a good night here. He has caught Lewis Stannard a lot quicker than I expected him to. So Lewis Stannard just struggling for pace a little bit here through the middle phase of the race. CJ Morgan now looks odds-on favourite to snatch 2nd place here, but Lewis will put up a pretty stern defence, I'm sure. Stannard, as I said, looking for his first podium of the season, and you don't know how often those podium opportunities are going to come about. So Lewis won't want to give this one up. CJ Morgan is not yet all over him, so I don't think too much about defending for the time being. Out through Clark Curve though, the gap is noticeably starting to come down. It's going to be on the slipstream now towards the braking zone at Paddock Hill Bend. On board with CJ. Let's see if we can figure out where it is that he's gaining time. Well, on the brakes, certainly into Paddock Hill Bend. Brakes a lot later there than Lewis Stannard, but still makes the apex and seems to get on the throttle a little bit earlier. A similar gain here into Druids. Yes, we do. Look at that. CJ Morgan right at the last second darts up the inside of Lewis Stannard. That is some advantage under braking. He perhaps outbraked himself slightly, the headed CJ, but thankfully Lewis saw him coming at the very last moment. Opened the steering wheel to allow him through. So CJ Morgan into second. He's 7 seconds behind Alexander Mostav. As long as Alex has enough fuel in the car, he should be good for the race win here. Through clearways again. Stannard is now, I think, looking to just try and tag along with CJ Morgan, because Riley Bishop has dropped back a little way. He's not been able to close in on Stannard in the same way that CJ did. So now just sort of sit at the wheel tracks of CJ Morgan. He may be safe from attack. You can see Riley Bishop all over the curbs in the rearview mirror there. Turn into the right-hander at Druids Corner, just washing a little bit wide there, out over the curb. Stannard dropping into Graham Hill Bend then will stay in 3rd place, but as I said, really it's that delta, that gap back to Riley Bishop that we're watching for. It's actually grown slightly there from 1.3 to 1.4 seconds as they made their way out of Graham Hill Bend. Jordan Taylor, by the way, has caught James Sherrington now, so 5th position could be in the offing here for Jordan Taylor. There they are, look, nose to tail through Clearways Corner. 5.5 minutes on the clock, and Jordan Taylor carrying so much more speed through the turn. And it is one of those funny corners, clearways, where you get tempted into carrying too much speed in, and then that sacrifices your exit speed. That wasn't the case for Jordan, though. He's on the inside. Fractionally has his nose ahead at the line. As the turn into Paddock Hill Bend, Jordan Taylor will slide through into 5th place. Likely would have been a podium, though, had it not been for the dramas at this part of the track a few laps ago. Just under 5 minutes to go. I'm not convinced he's going to be able to catch Riley Bishop. In fact, I'm not convinced that Sherrington is done with him just yet. James nearly slipping up the inside into Druids. Jordan Taylor does manage to creep back through into 5th spot. Alexander Mostad, by the way, another new fastest lap last time around, really asserting his authority on this second race of the evening at Brands Hatch, leaving all of the action behind him. But that is the joy of the reversed grid. You can at least salvage something from the night, but if you compare his points haul tonight from that of CJ Morgan's, the advantage still definitely lies with the championship leader. CJ was race winner in race 1, 25 points, 22 points will go his way now for this second place in race 2. Mostad, of course, was well down the order in race number 1. Druids we go, and you can just see Lewis Stannard now is slowly but surely starting to slip away from CJ Morgan, but not massively into the clutches of Riley Bishop. It's the closing few laps now, so he might be able to hold on here to a podium place. Be nice to see another driver on the podium. Coming into tonight, we'd already had 6 different podium finishes from the first 3 races, so maybe we'll add another one here. Second race at Brands Hatch, if Lewis Stannard can fend off Riley Bishop, who got himself 2 podium finishes so far this season, both of them 3rd places, so even if he can get past Lewis, I think there'll be a tinge of frustration for Riley that he can't seem to improve upon 3rd. Gaining slightly on Stannard that time around, as they drop down through Paddock Hill Bend up towards Druids for the 17th time. Lots more laps in here than we are accustomed to because it is such a short track, the Brands Hatch Indy circuit. People, when they think of Brands Hatch, think of the magnificent Grand Prix circuit, of course, which stretches out into the woodlands, but the Indy circuit does a fine job as well of offering a shorter alternative, lacks some of the full commitment corners out the back, but it's a really demanding circuit. Paddock Hill Bend is Paddock Hill Bend, that's always a challenge, but then also corners like Surtees, that's full commitment really, and then the technically demanding sections through Graham Hill Bend and Clearways can sometimes catch drivers out as well. That timing tower is catching me out, Alexander Mostav, with the sim racing equivalent of a dodgy transponder, and occasionally seems to fall behind CJ Morgan, but I can assure you that with probably 3 laps to go, Alexander Mostav is definitely still in the lead of the race. In fact, he's halfway back up the M6 towards Croft, I think, by this point. The M1, I suppose it would be from Brands Hatch, because he is so far ahead in this race. He'll already, I'm sure, be starting to think about the next rounds of the championship and trying to add to the very, very impressive performance that he's had here. Mostav, definitely a candidate, I would say, for driver of the day. I know he had the issue, whatever it was, in race number 1, but Alexander Mostav in race 2 has been simply sublime. You could argue he's had it easier than the likes of CJ, though, because he's not had to come through the pack in the same way that CJ Morgan has, but you have to capitalise on the opportunities that are given to you. And in the face of adversity and in the face of the disappointment of what happened in race 1, Alexander's done a really good job, actually, to just get his head back into gear and put that all behind him in what has been so far, touch wood, a flawless performance. Back to 8th place here, Nathan Jensen and Harley Connolly doing battle, and Harley Connolly looking to get up the inside of Nathan here towards Paddock Hill Bend. Quite close enough, almost dips a wheel onto the grass there, actually, on the way into Paddock. Shout out to Luke Stintler as well. He's had a really disappointing night, hasn't he? But Stintler has had strong pace, and I'm sure we will see him on the podium in the very near future in this championship. Looks as though 11th is the best that he will manage again here, having lost all of that ground in the early stages. So one more lap to go then at the end of this one for these two. Can Harley Connolly find a way through? Right on the tail as they turn through Surtees. Is there a gap up the inside into clearways? No, there isn't. And so Harley Connolly tries to make a gap by bouncing off the rear of the car ahead. But actually, we saw this a bit at Donington, didn't we? If you do get into the back of somebody, it almost just transfers your momentum onto them. It doesn't really seem, as long as you don't get them too sideways, you can really benefit the other car, actually, from those little bumps, even through the middle of a corner. And we saw that there from Harley, who just dips a wheel on the grass now, this time into Paddock Hill Bend, saves the initial slide, but then gets armfuls of understeer through the middle of the corner and slips out way, way wide of where he should have been. None of this, though, is of any concern to Alexander Mostav, who had a really disappointing result in race 1, having qualified on pole position, but he is going to claim a race victory in race 2, having benefited from the reverse grid draw. Alexander Mostav is our third different winner of the season, and he does it in style here at Brands Hatch. Second for CJ Morgan, and this is going to be the drag race to the line for third, and Lewis Stannard and Riley Bishop banging doors, but Bishop is going to get him on the final couple of 100 metres. Riley Bishop onto the podium, and Lewis Stannard will be so frustrated with that. He'd driven a really strong race up until that point. Clearly wasn't quite as quick as CJ Morgan or Riley Bishop, but he managed to keep Riley behind him for the last number of laps. But something happening at the final corner to allow Riley on to the podium. Jordan Taylor came home in 5th ahead of James Sherrington, Levine Kishaw, Nathan Jensen getting the better there of Harley Connolly, and that's the lap car of Luke Stickler going around the outside of him with Crewton. That will be the final finisher in the race. For Alexander Mostav, that was a wheel-perfect performance, really. Got the lead in the opening couple of corners and quite literally never looked back. 7 seconds the winning margin, which I reckon might be the biggest winning margin of the season so far. Certainly it was a much bigger one than we're used to seeing generally, even in reverse grid races, but that's often what can happen when a quick driver has a bad first race and a good grid position for the second. They do have the potential to check out, and it's precisely what Alexander managed to do. So we will get a chance in a moment then to chat to Alexander for the second time this season. Tonight, I should say. And indeed now does join us here in the commentary box. So Alex, for the second time, is here with us. We'll get on to the positives in a moment, Alex, but first I do want to just take your mind back to a race you'd probably rather forget, race 1. We were all very surprised to see you in the pit lane. What exactly happened?
Well, I was too busy being happy about qualifying first, so I'd forgotten to swap to the race fuel, the amount of fuel for the race. So I'd had to come in twice because I hadn't filled it up enough. So, but I mean, all in all, at least I didn't do too badly in the first race.
No, exactly. You managed to put that behind you, and of course you've always got that reverse grid to fall back on, so it is important that you don't sort of let that get to you too much. And my word, did you take advantage of that? You must have known starting on the front row that you had a pretty good shot at that one.
Yeah, I was hoping to have a good race, and it seems I did.
You did. Pretty much wheel perfect, really. Were there any dramas, anything at all that made you a bit nervous there, or was it as plain sailing as it looked?
Well, I did have a little bit of a moment through turn 1 where I lost about 4/10, but other than that, I was quite happy with the race.
Yeah, that's when you know someone's had a pretty flawless race, when a little moment that cost them a few tenths is the biggest headliner. Alex, huge congratulations. What are your thoughts now for the next part of the season? Then we're off to, I think it's Croft next, a very, very different challenge there. You looking forward to that one?
Yes, I am. I really enjoyed Croft when I did it in the real Junior Saloon Car Championship, so I hope to do just as well as I've done here, there.
Excellent. That sounds like a plan. Alex, congratulations. Really, really strong night for you tonight. Hoping for more of the best next week. Well done.
Thank you.
And I think our final interview that we will be able to have is with our runner-up finisher, CJ Morgan, who continues his unbroken run of podium finishes. That I think I said in that race, worse to the effect, CJ, that is how you win a championship. If you can't win, you finish second. If you can't finish second, you finish third. And, well, so far, actually, you've never finished worse than second. This is going quite well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely, to win a championship, it's definitely about damage limitation, in which every race I believe I finished ahead of Riley, who's my championship rival, so that's good. Slowly gaining a lead, which race 1 definitely helped. I think did Riley finish 4th or 5th?
Yeah, top 5, but
Yeah.
off the podium, certainly.
So that was definitely a big points boost for me. And then that race just got a bit unlucky at the start, involved in a few incidents, but managed to claw it back after the safety car, just picking each other off one, and then sent an absolute Hail Mary move into Druids, which I was hoping I could stop in time, and I did, so that was good. And then just kept my head down, kept consistent, and held P2.
I think you'll enjoy watching the broadcast back, because we were riding on board with you for that move into Druids, and it certainly caught me by surprise. Honestly, was it planned, or were you just a bit caught out actually by just how much later you could brake?
I think I realised that I could brake a couple meters later than Lewis, so I thought, why not just go for it? And it worked out. I broke around about my normal point, just pointing towards the apex, and managed to slip it just up the inside.
Well, it worked a dream, and it was certainly exciting to ride on board with you at times during that race. CJ, congratulations, another near flawless night, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you very much, CJ. And finally, Riley Bishop has made it into the commentary box. Riley, 3rd place finish for you there, and you got it right on the line. We didn't actually see what happened through those final few corners. We saw that you were catching. We didn't know if you'd quite get there in time. Talk us through what did happen on the final lap.
So basically, I didn't even notice the last lap. So Lewis started defending into corners, and into the last corner he defended a little bit too much, which let me go round the outside and just slip under him and get 3rd place somehow.
Right, okay, so that's interesting. You hadn't even realised it was the end of the race. I mean, I guess that's how in the zone you kind of have to be, because it was one of those nights, wasn't it, really, where you were just constantly in the thick of the action.
Yeah, exactly that.
Which, do you enjoy those kind of races? We enjoy watching them, but I know some drivers can get a bit stressed out by that. Do you enjoy that sort of elbows out, door-to-door combat?
It's like a 50-50. I sort of do like the door-to-door, but sometimes it never ends as you think it would.
Yeah, always fraught with danger, isn't it? But you seem to come out of it reasonably well in that race. Your thoughts for Croft then? I think that's another track where it's going to be difficult to overtake. We might see a bit more of that elbows out racing. Is that a track you think you're going to go well at?
I've never heard of the track or even been to it, so it's probably just a really new track I have to get used to. So I have to put a lot of laps in just to keep up with everyone else.
Oh, that does make me feel old. Someone who hasn't heard of Croft. You'll love it, trust me. It's a little bit like taking a step back in a time machine, but it's a lot of fun, that's for sure. Riley, thanks for joining us, and congratulations on the podium.
Thank you very much.
So there are our top 3 drivers then in the second race of the night. Another really entertaining evening of racing here in the Junior Saloon Car Championship's official esports series, brought to us by Perfect Acceleration Sim Racing. This is how the championship looks after tonight's races. And, well, look at that. CJ Morgan, the only driver into triple figures on points, 121 points, his advantage over, his score, which is 23 points just ahead of Riley Bishop. Alexander Mostav moving into 3rd, a bit more like it. Jordan Taylor moving on up the order as well into 4th position, and Lewis Stannard 5th. 6th, Jamie Petters. 7th, Harley Connolly. 8th, Zach Palmer. 9th, Nathan Jensen, and 10th for James Sherrington. Really nothing between any of those drivers from second on back, is there? So even if CJ Morgan does continue to pull away at the front, there is still going to be some interesting battling going on behind him in the championship. And remember, prizes to the top 3, so if you can make it into those top 3, then there is money on the line for you. This, of course, all pending penalties, but we didn't actually have any penalties for on-track incidents at Donington Park. Hopefully the same here at Brands Hatch. Well, as we've been saying, we're heading to Croft next, up in North Yorkshire. A very, very different type of racetrack, it must be said. But Croft on the 16th of March will take us into the second half of the season before Alton Park, Snetterton and Thruxton will round out the championship. CJ Morgan will be looking to take one more step towards that championship in a week's time at Croft, but there are plenty of drivers still hoping to stop him, and will be looking to begin that real title challenge at Croft next week. Well, once again, thank you for joining us here at Brands Hatch. A big thanks to everyone who's been working hard to bring us the championship. We will all be back again in a week's time at Croft. We hope you'll be there to join us too for the 4th night of racing in the Junior Saloon Car Championship's official esports series.